lovely little friends, and welcome to our Kandinsky Mosaic tutorial. We're going to be working on this round mirror today, and the first thing we want to do is remove the mirror from the center of our project if it hasn't been removed for you already. In the event that you receive this project and the mirror is still inside, on the back we have these three small tabs that can be lifted. You may need an adult to help you with this. These three tabs get lifted and the mirror will just pop right out. You can just put this to the side, press your tabs back down, and flip your mirror over. While we're looking at the back, it's important to note that this strip here, this is where your mirror is going to be hung from. This is the top of the mirror. So I always like to flip my project over and orient that area at the top so I know as I'm working that that is where the top will be when I hang it up. All right, so today we're talking about an artist by the name of Vasily Kandinsky, and he was a Russian painter that lived from 1866 to 1944. A lot of his works can be seen in New York City, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but he was a very prolific artist and has many wonderful artworks. For the first step of the project, where we're designing our base, you're going to need a pencil, and in your kit you received an empty cup. So you're going to grab those two. I'm going to grab a pencil that's a little bigger. I'm going to grab those two items to start with. So the work that we are modeling today is a painting called Squares with Concentric Circles, which was painted in 1913. A concentric circle is a circle that has a circle inside of it that has a circle inside of it. And this project was called Squares with Concentric Circles because it had a square around each set of concentric circles. So that's what we're going to create here. And I'm going to show you how we're going to do it. We're going to use this cup as a guide for how wide we want each of our sections to be. So I'm going to start right up here at the top, and I'm going to just trace my cup. And I'm going to move it straight down to the bottom of my project, and I'm going to trace it again. It hangs off the edge a little bit. Don't get worried. We're just need a guide for right now. It doesn't have to be, it's not going to be a perfect circle because you're going to be going off the edge like this. All right, so we've stacked one on top of the other. In these empty spaces, we want to fit two circles in each of these spaces. So if we put this one right next to this one, we're going to have a big weird empty space here. So we want to slide it over a little bit. I would say about the width of your pencil, maybe a tiny bit bigger. And you're going to trace it on. What happens if you trace your circle on and you don't like where you put it? You got an eraser, and you can just erase it and try again. So this one should be about equal distance between the two other circles. And then we are going to do the same thing on the other side. We're just using the width of this cup as a guide for where our sections are going to be. Okay, I'm pretty happy with the way that that looks. Now that we have this divided, we're going to just put a straight line in between each of these circles. Doesn't have to be perfect. Your spacing doesn't have to be perfect. Your lines don't have to be perfect. Your circles are definitely not going to be perfect. We're just giving ourselves a guideline. Okay. When you signed up for this class, you picked out a palette of colors. You picked either trendy, bright, or pastel. So depending on what palette you picked, that's what colors you're going to have. For the purposes of our demonstration today, I have the trendy color palette. So the first thing we want to do is paint each of these sections a solid color. This is what we're going to need on our table. Our project, our paints, a bowl of water, some paper towels that you can just grab from your house. And we have 2 brushes today. So I have this little blue brush, a little square, and I also have this round, small detail brush. Yours might not be green, but you have some kind of detail brush in your kit. So we have our small square brush and we have a detail brush. We also want to make sure our workspace is covered. So just a placemat underneath your work. And we would recommend today wearing either art clothes or a smock, as the materials that we'll be using for this project are permanent or difficult to remove from fabrics. All right, so we're gonna start with our square brush. And the first step of this project is gonna be to paint each of these sections a different color. So you can really mix this up however you want. I'm gonna start with my green, and I'm gonna just jump right in and start painting one of my sections. Don't worry if your color is not totally solid. We're gonna go back and do another coat. So this is sort of just coat number 1. We can always go back and make this bolder and darker. We do wanna keep our paint thin and spread out. We don't want it to take too long to dry. And we also wanna make sure that the color is nice and consistent. And one of the ways we can do that is by spreading it out. All right, so I have my first section filled in, and I'm taking my brush and I'm painting the small inside edge that is below that color. I'm gonna tilt it up and show you. Okay. So I painted this inside edge, the same color as the top. When you put your mirror back inside of here, it's going to reflect this edge. And if we leave it brown, the reflection is going to be brown, and it's not going to be as cute as if we painted a color. We're also going to take this color and extend it over the top edge of our project. For similar reasons, when you hang this up on your wall, it'll look much nicer if this outside edge is colored and you don't see the wood color anymore. If you ever need to fast forward or pause or rewind any part of this tutorial, you can do that at any time. If you need a break, need to get a snack or a drink, go ahead and just push pause at any time. By the time you've done the top and the bottom, chances are that this section is probably almost dry and ready for you to do a second coat. So that's what we're gonna do now. And you're gonna see that next coat is gonna be much more solid than the first one. Sometimes you may even need 3, depending on what the color is. For our purposes today, I'm gonna do 2, but if you really wanted to, you could always go back and do a 3rd one. There's gonna be other details in each of these sections, so you don't have to get too crazy. Okay, so our first section's done. I'm gonna wash my brush and dry it on my paper towel. If you leave your table for anything and you have paint on your brush, it's always important to rinse and dry your brush off and keep it free from having acrylic paint dry inside of here. If acrylic paint dries inside your brush, it can be really difficult to remove. So just always make sure that you're keeping your brush clean as you're moving along. I'm gonna skip this section and do the next one, and that way this has time to dry before I paint the 2 sections that are next to it, and we don't have any chance of mixing these 2 colors together. So in your head, you may wanna kind of plan out, well, what color am I gonna put here? And then what color am I gonna put here? So when I get back to here, I'm gonna put green here, and I think I'm gonna do pink in this next section. So we're gonna do the same thing that we did in our first section. We are gonna be painting solid, and then we're gonna be painting the edges. And lastly, we're gonna be going back to the top and adding a second coat. Moving on to the next section, you're going to pick another color and we're going to be filling in this section here. right, so our background colors are all on there. They're gonna need a couple minutes to dry before we move on. So while they're drying, we're gonna talk about how we're gonna be painting the circle parts of these concentric circles inside of squares. So earlier we were talking about how this project was gonna look, and basically what we have right now are different sections that have just solid colors. So what we're gonna be adding in here, for starters, is a big circle. So once it dries a little bit, we're gonna take our pencil and we're gonna sketch in a big circle. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfectly round. It could be a little bit almost like an oval. It could be a little wiggly. So for example, it doesn't, let's see, I'll give you another box over here. It could be not perfect. It could be sort of wonky. In the original painting, the circles are all different. They're not all perfect, and some of them are misshapen, some of them are small, some of them are big. In some sections, there are 2 circles. In some sections, there are 3. In some, there's even 4. So all of our sections are gonna be different, and that's gonna be okay. That's gonna be good. That's gonna be what adds some interest to our project. So I'm gonna take a break and let my background colors dry for a moment, and then we'll be right back to move on to the next step of our project. And we're back. It only took about 2, maybe 2.5 minutes for my project to completely dry, and we're ready to go to the next step. We're gonna go back to our pencil, and we're gonna give ourselves a little bit of a guideline about where these circles are gonna go. If you're worried about drawing your first circle, you can go back to this cup and you can either put it upside down and make a big circle, or you can flip it over and even use the bottom side to make a smaller circle. If you're comfortable just winging it, you don't have to trace anything. You may even still be able to see the line from that original circle, and if you can use that line as a guide as well. So I'm gonna start down here in my purple section, and I'm just drawing a general circle shape. Some of them I'm gonna make really round, and some of them I'm gonna make not as round. This one looks like it's gonna be kind of like an oval. This section was a little bigger. They're not gonna be perfect, and they're not supposed to be perfect. So that's one of the things that's really fun and easy about this project, and something that I really love about it. I'll trace one so that you can have an idea about how that would look, in case you're not wanting to freehand them. There's a traced one. That one's gonna be big, which is cool. It's gonna be different than the other ones. I'm drawing really lightly, and then you can always go back and darken your line a little bit. So some of them went off the side, some of them didn't. All good. We're gonna switch to our smaller brush, and we're gonna start using different colors to create these circles. Now don't forget, inside of this circle, we're gonna be making another circle. So you wanna keep alternating colors so that you keep it interesting. So for example, on this first one, maybe we're gonna do, I haven't used this dark blue yet. I'm gonna try out this dark blue. So take your time, and you're gonna follow the shape that you sketched around on your project. Your line can be thick, your line can be thin. You do wanna spread it out so that it dries, so we can draw another circle on here. You can go off the edge. Anything goes. In between colors, you're gonna rinse your brush and dry your brush. You don't wanna take this dirty brush and dip it into all your colors, because you need to keep using them. All right, so I'm in my second section, and I'm gonna continue working around my project, alternating colors and making these circles. So our first set of circles is done. I've tried to keep it interesting and maybe make some a little bit thicker, mix up the colors, and just try to think about how it's gonna look when we do our next set of circles. So if your circles paint is really thick, mine happen to be really thick, I'm gonna go back in and spread out a little bit just so that the color can dry a little bit quicker. Otherwise, it's gonna take a long time to dry. So you can go back in if yours are very thick like mine and just sort of spread out and then dry off a little bit on the paper towel. If yours aren't thick, you can just give them a couple minutes to dry. They should dry pretty fast as long as they're not super thick like mine. Okay, so we're gonna go in and add another circle to the inside of this initial circle that we've done here. So again, we want to mix up the colors and try to keep it interesting. So try to think about a color that you don't see in that section, and then you're going to add it right in to the inside of the first circle. Our second layer of circles is on, and we're gonna continue and try to get a third or possibly even fourth layer of circles in some of these. Some of them where we've made the inside small are only gonna have 3 circles, and some of the ones where we have a little more room, we can probably go for 4. So I've pretty much filled up all of my circle space. I'm gonna try to add one more circle inside of this one right here. So I'm actually just gonna dry a little space off in here with my square brush and then use the bottom of my brush to dot a circle right in there. And you can do that on any of these. The bottom of your brush is a really great tool for making circles. So if you feel like you could drop a little dot on any of these, you could go ahead and do it. You may need to make a space for it like I did, but you might be able to just drop it right on top of there. Just be careful that it doesn't mix together too much with the color that's underneath. Before we do the next step of the project, which is gonna be to add some outlining to these circles, we're gonna need to really give this a little bit of time to dry. So we're gonna go ahead and take a break for a couple of minutes and just put this project to the side and give it a few minutes to get nice and dry before we move on. Oh, I meant to say, while you're letting this dry, you are going to clean up any of the paints that you still have out. So you're gonna go ahead and put the caps back on all of your paints and put these to the side or back into the bag to go into your kit. You can get rid of your water and make sure all your brushes are rinsed out and laid flat to dry. Be right back. All right, we're back. I've given my project a little time to dry. Honestly, it was only about 5 minutes and it's mostly dry at this point. It's always a good idea to sort of give it this little touch test. You really don't want to get acrylic paint on your Sharpie marker, which is what we're gonna be using in the next step of the project. So you do want to make sure that all of the sections are completely dry before you move forward. I propped my piece up in front of a fan for a couple of minutes and it was very quick to dry. So we are going to take our Sharpie marker and we're going to add some details and outlining to our project. The first thing that we're going to add is a line along the border of each color section. So in between where we made these different colored blocks, we're going to outline them. Sometimes I do a solid line, sometimes I do 2 lines. You can also do a line that has sort of lines and dots together. Whatever looks good to you. This part of the project is really totally up to you how your outlining looks. We're also going to outline all the layers of our circles. So I prefer a sort of wavy line in here. I try not to make it perfect. If you've made all your circles really perfect and you prefer that kind of look, you could definitely outline these to look like perfect circles. I prefer not. If for any reason acrylic paint gets on the tip of your marker, you can sort of just roll it off on the side of your project on your placemat. Definitely don't want to let it dry on there. Your marker will stop working. All right, so I'm working my way around and I'm just adding in the outline to each section of my circle. All right, so if you need to pause for a second and continue outlining, go ahead and do that now. I know I kind of did that one really quickly, but I just wanted to show you really quick how it's gonna look when you have the whole thing outlined. All right, at this point, we are ready to begin the tiling part of our project. Today, we're gonna be tiling with these clear glass gems. And one of the things that's cool about this is when your project dries, you're gonna be able to see your design right through these gems, and it's gonna give it sort of this look that you tiled your project with these gems, but in reality, your painting part of your project is underneath the gems. So we're gonna be filling up this entire thing with the gems. You may wanna measure it out before you start so that you know exactly where the gems are gonna go, and so you know that they meet up and can cover this whole thing. The glue is going to take a couple days to dry. So today when you make your project, it's gonna look all white and you're gonna think, you know what? I made a mistake and I ruined my project. Have no fear. Give it a couple of days. Honestly, it's sometimes almost a week, but I guarantee you that your tiles are gonna dry. The glue is gonna dry totally clear. Here's an important tip for getting your glue to dry clear. In your kit, we've included this cheap plastic black bristle brush. We want to spread the glue really thin on our tiles, and That's gonna help the glue to dry so that you are able to see through it. So you're almost gonna be painting a layer of glue on here, a fairly thin layer. And then you're gonna be sticking your tile onto your project. And you wanna give this some good pressure. You wanna get a nice even coat of glue under there. And you want it to be nice and thin. So we're gonna work our way around. We're gonna be able to make 2 rows of tiles. So I'm gonna do the inside row and then I'll go back and do the outside row. So my inside row is done, and I'm gonna start to work on the outside row of tiles. Gonna do the same thing. We're just painting the glue on the back and sticking the tiles on. All right, squeeze them all on. Give them a good press. Like I said, you want to try to really get the glue nice and thin under the tile. So if you haven't already, go through and really press these down and try to get a nice thin layer of glue under that tile. Once this dries and it's totally clear, it's going to be super beautiful. Don't forget, you have the mirror that you removed in the first step of this project. You're going to put it back in the same way that you removed it. I would wait until tomorrow to do this. You do want to let this glue set up nice and tacky before you flip over your project. But once you do, you can put this right inside. I hope you had the best time creating art with us today. I wanted to let you know that if you want to view works of art by today's artist Kandinsky, you can do so in New York City at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. You can also view work by this artist at the Guggenheim, where there are over 200 works by this artist on display. Again, I hope you had a great time creating with us today, and we'll see you all next time.